Greetings, Talva, and I hope you've had a fantastic weekend and you're looking forward to the content that I've got planned for you this week. So part of this content week, I'm going to be starting off with a deployment demonstration. Now, deployment is such an important phase of the game, and when you get it right, you're setting up for success. When you fail to set it up properly, it can almost feel like you've lost the game before you've even started. And this is something that I see all the time, and I want to kind of pass on my knowledge on the deployment side of things and really give you the tools for success. So I'm going to start with demonstrating a balanced Kauyon list, and it's going to be on TTS using UKTC round 1 on the Terraform, Swift Action, and Sweeping Engagement deployment. But before I do that, I want to showcase some amazing work that's been going on behind the scenes over the last couple of months, and you can gain access to deployment videos like I'm about to show you, and trust me, there is a lot of deployment videos. I've done over 60 deployment videos over all the terrain types, WTC, GW, and UKTC. And each video is roughly around about half an hour, so 30 minutes. So there's basically 1800 minutes or 30 hours of content ready for you to watch. And in order to get access to this, you just have to sign up on the basic tier, which is the Pathfinder tier. So what you get, let me just showcase, and I'll showcase the actual content library. So in here we have the Firecast, the Montiar Battle Dome. Now I've got the new Academy training, which is separate to the deployment, but it's how to build and understand like a balanced list. So I've given you a staple of Kauyon, Montcar, Retaliation, Kroot Hunting Pack, Auxiliary, EPC, so Experimental Prototype Cadre, and the All Kroot Hunting Pack Army. So no town models, just Kroot. And then with that in mind, these deployment videos will have every detachment. So Montcar, Kauyon, Retaliation, Auxiliary CAD, Kroot Hunting Pack, and the new Experimental Prototype Cadre. So that's 6 detachments deployed over 3 different terrain formats. And as you can see here, we've got GW layouts of every detachment, GW layout 1 and 4, the Hammer and Anvil, the Search and Destroy, Crucible of Battle. And then we've got the Tipping Point. Then we've got all of them displayed, as you can see here, ready for you to watch. Short, digestible content that gives you all of the macro strategy and how to deploy your forces using the balanced list that I provided in the earlier folder that I showed you. Then we move on to UKTC. So in the exact same way, you've got Sweeping Engagement, Round 1, Terraform. You've got Crucible of Battle, which is Purge the Foe, Scorched Earth. And then you've got Search and Destroy, so the Take and Hold, and there's a Hidden Supplies version as well with Linchpin. And you've got those 3 deployment maps for every single detachment. And then finally, the WTC. Using the new WTC maps, and I've searched, not searched, but I've chosen specific ones, the maps 4 to 5. And I've done Search and Destroy, Tipping Point, and Crucible of Battle, and laid out my deployment guide for each of those types of deployment. So when I'm telling you that this is one hell of a pack to get involved in, it really is. And that's just part of the Basic Training Academy. There's plenty more. You gain access to the Discord, behind the scenes, list discussions, general chat, and live calls that I do every month. And that's just the Pathfinder tiers. That's just the entry-level tier to the Puretide program. So click on the link below and use the code DEPLOYMENT for 10% off. And that will be in play for May. So 10% off, use the code DEPLOYMENT and when you're checking out, and it'll knock off 10% of the initial fee, and then you're rocking and rolling, and you can really deep dive into all these deployment videos. I've put a lot of work and a lot of attention into explaining macro strategy, what you should look out for, and let's get straight into the demonstration of exactly what I've done in all these videos. I'm going to give you the first one for free today. Right, so let's switch and go straight to TTS. So give me a second while I just sort out my screen. And there we go. Right then, so here we have the round 1 of UKTC. Sweeping Engagement, and the mission in the UKTC pack will be using Swift Action. So battle line units that can advance or fall back are still eligible to perform an action. The Sweeping Engagement deployment, as shown in this picture here. And then Terraform is a mission where when you perform the Terraform action on an objective in No Man's Land, and you could also terraform your opponent's home field objective. For 4VP, you get, in the traditional sense of I'm holding the objective, I get 4 points for every objective marker I control, including your home field, and then 2 victory points for each objective marker they have terraformed during the battle. So, as an example, if turn 1, you move a unit out onto an objective in no man's land, you perform the action terraform, and it goes off in your next command phase, so the opponent hasn't interacted with it, you get 2 victory points per that objective you terraformed continuously throughout the game, regardless of you controlling it from that point. So, in short, it's one of those missions where you can plan with certain lists to go out and terraform early. Tau is not really that one, that type of army to be able to pull this off easily, but it can be done. Or you wait till like the mid to end game, especially with Kauyon, and when you're delivering Withering Firepower, that you can then use a unit to terraform, assuming that the unit can survive any slapback. So this is a mission where it kind of promotes a little bit of a kind of like steady tactical resource management, but at the same time, if you can block off your opponent from ever getting to the objective or shooting you off, then you can get a terraform done early. So, with that in mind, let's talk about some of the basics. So when I go into a round or a mission, I always look at a few core things. And those core things are, right, I am a shooting army, so I want to know my firing lanes. I want to know where my pieces can be placed to get the most optimization out of said pieces. So on UKTC, you'll see here that I've drawn 3 little square boxes. On the right flank here, and then 1 on the left. So from these firing lanes, if we go down to the one on the right, if I position a piece here, or units that can get into this position, I can threaten the following angles. So if I take the Riptide, for example, and I can move him 10, he gets to here, and he can threaten all the way down here. And also, if I position him and have part of his model here, I can also shoot all the way into the deployment zone, aka these red circles. So as long as I have pieces to threaten these 2 red circles, it forces my opponent to deploy in a defensive manner, whether that be deploying here out of this line of sight, and also rather than deploying on the line, they might want to place something behind this ruin here so it can't be targeted. So I'm influencing dead space. Because if I didn't have pieces like my Riptide or my Broadsides here, what's stopping the opponent from deploying something big right on the line here and is not going to have any fear of getting shot? Now, the Broadsides can reach both of these points the same with the Riptide. So when I'm deploying these 2 key damage dealing pieces, I've positioned them in such a way where they can literally have 2 options, to the left or to the right. Broadsides are a funny one, because most people say, well, broadsides are really slow and they only move at 5. But they're on circular bases, so they can pivot for free. And with the railgun variant, it usually adds about 2 inches, 2.5 inches to your movement. And let me demonstrate. A broadside moves 5 inches. So the broadside will move to here, therefore not reaching the box. So if I just copy and paste the model, it goes to about here. Same with this one. Right, so my broadsides have moved to 5 inches. Now I get to pivot for free. So I can pivot the gun, like so, which has gained me roughly 2.5 inches. So now both my broadsides are in this box. So my broadsides can threaten this area. So when the opponent's deploying their forces, they have to try and squeeze things into this piece of terrain here to avoid getting shot turn 1. I'm influencing the dead space like I talked about. So if he deploys there, my broadsides can move out and from that angle can shoot into here. Now, if we were to apply the same thing that I've just shown you, but to the right hand flank, then what we do is we basically place the broadsides here, move them 5, gets them to here, but in the same way, we pivot and we turn our guns this way. So therefore, I've got more from here. If it was just here, I wouldn't be able to see past this. But now, with the gun sticking out, I can cover the entire of this area here. And also, I'm covering a third angle, which is down into their deployment. So placing broadsides exactly where I've shown you here is perfect. So I've set up my anti-tank piece, where they can cover 3 angles, potentially, depending on when they're used, here. Most of the time it's not going to come into play, but in the later stage of the game it definitely can. So optimizing the placement is key to success, and that is how to utilize the broadsides. The Riptide, you could multiply, well, you could use the Riptide in the exact same way that I've shown with the broadsides. Riptides are funny because obviously we like the models, they're really poseable, and depending on how your Riptide's posed, it might stick out parts, but here you can be pretty much safe, but there are maybe a few lines that they can get on to the Riptide through here, which is fine. A Riptide is still durable, it'll still benefit from cover, and it'll have a 4-pin bun, but I suppose if you really wanted to tuck it in, you might have to reposition a few units just to tuck it in even further, which can be quite difficult with the combo that I'm about to show you. So, we've talked about the broadsides, we've talked about the Riptides. Let's talk about the other anti-tank piece that I've got, which is a Hammerhead. Now, the Hammerhead really, with movement 10, you can position a Riptide here so that it can just move out and threaten the center line, but it can also, if it moves 3, then it's got 7 left. It can get to about here, maybe stick out its gun and cut the angle quite tightly to the outskirts of this objective. But really, from deployment, we're just looking to cover this roll here to shoot down the long midboard and to the left-hand flank as well, to pressurize where the enemy gets to deploy their forces. So if you can force them to tuck stuff in here, that's great, but they're not going to be able to fit everything. So the Hammerhead can also go into in that same position and cover long firing lanes to threaten transports, anti-armor, you name it. And then the third Riptide is deployed centrally so that the Riptide can go back this way and cover firing lanes here, or it can move this way and do a few things. Let me just show you. The Riptide can go 8, 2, and what it can do is it can cover the other part of the objective here and also shoot downfield as well. And the Riptide is also safe from any incoming fire, which I'll go on to in a second. So we've talked about our Riptides, and we talked about our broadsides, and we talked about our Hammerheads. Or Hammerhead, should I say. Let's talk about our guiding units, shall we? So, we have got in this list 2 units of Pathfinders. And I should have probably gone through the list at the beginning, but I will do a kind of, I'll put a paste bin link in the description so you can have access to it. But for now, in short, it's 3 Riptides. You've got, sorry, let me go from the start. We have a Cold Star Commander with the Plasma Finite team. That's the only commander that we've got. We've got 2 Breachers, 2 Devilfish, 2 units of Crew, 2 units of Pathfinders, 3 units of Stealth, 3 Riptides, and Railgun Hammerhead, and a unit of 2 Broadsides. Okay? So, we've got our guiding units. Now, in the same way that I've talked about setting up firing lanes, we also have the difficulty of setting up where our guiding units are going, which obviously is integral to how our army works. Now, this is not as complex as you think, because all you're needing to do is set up the left flank, the right flank, the centre. As long as you have equal resources, a guiding resource is split across the left, the centre, the right, you're going to be okay. So in this scenario here, I've placed a unit of Pathfinders on the line. And this red unit is the one with the grab drone from -2. And the reason I've set them up here is because you can scout move forward if you go first, because obviously the Pathfinders do have scout move 7. because I've given the grav drone, which gives them -2 to charge. And in most games, people are going to set up things to attack or sabotage your expansion objective. So this one on the left is your expansion, and this one over here is your opponent's expansion as well. So we're both going to be looking at trading pieces to deny primary. And the good thing about Pathfinders with -2 is that actually it makes it slightly tricky for an opponent to charge them. Because if an average unit, and we're going to use the basics here, movement 6, gets to here, in order to touch this objective, you need to be on this part of the ruin, which means you can be chargeable from the outside. So if a unit moves 6, gets to about there, then it would need a 7-inch charge, because it'd be 7.1. But -2 makes it a 9, so it's not as reliable. So with the Pathfinders being here, they can scout move into position if you're going first, and you can just scout them up in a good position here. And then if you're going second, you've got 2 options, which is still scout move up to here, but maybe be a little bit further back, so it's an impossible charge. So 6 plus 12 is 18, but 17.1 -2, they're not going to make it. And then you're protected from any firing down the centre, and obviously you took them in, so you can't be shot from down the flank. And then next turn you have an option to move up, touch the objective, and force the opponent to have to come and deal with them. So, and then from a guiding perspective, they can guide loads of stuff from the flank and also support down the centre by sticking a few models out like so. For example, if you imagine all the Pathfinders are lining the wall like that, you can then guide all the way down the centre, you can guide all the way down the flanks, and remember Pathfinders have 2 guides, so really making use out of their ability there. But for now, let's just say they've scout moved into a defensive position where they're not going to get shot, they're not going to get charged. And if something is really fast that maybe has advance and charge, then okay, no problem. I'm going to just have them scout move behind the wall here to safety. Okay? So just assume that these are behind the wall here. I'm not going to mess around on TTS trying to make it work, but they are behind the wall, or alternatively here. Right then. And then we've got a unit of stealth suits as well. Now with Kauyon specifically, you can really make use out of repositioning your stealth suits with the stratagem Wall of Mirrors. So it's not that important that, you know, they have to be off the board, because you can always make use of that stratagem later. So I have a unit of stealth suits up here on the 2nd floor, assuming that there's no ways of being charged. And what they can then do is if I get like certain secondaries, I can go and achieve them. And I'm going to get onto secondaries later on. But for now, I've got a unit of stealth suits here, being able to support guiding, whether it be down the left-hand flank or down the centre for something like a Riptide or a Railgun Hammerhead. So we've discussed the left-hand flank now. Now centrally, because stealth suits have infiltrate, what you can actually do is you can infiltrate them here, 1 inch away from the wall to block charges, and you can have them set up to be able to do certain secondaries and also help guiding, whether that be moving out to this position here to guide down that firing lane, or alternatively stick maybe 1 model out to guide something that's on this objective or maybe down that flank. So it gives you quite a lot of options. But mainly they're here to help screen the wall, and by screening the wall I'm talking about staying 1 inch away, so then it doesn't just invite people to come in and start charging things like your Riptide or your Devilfish. Inside this Devilfish here, because on the UKTC these 2 bits of terrain do count as separate pieces. So if you're touching this terrain, assuming that you can't be seen over the top of it, and obviously a Devilfish is low down so it won't, you could be touching half of it on here, which means that even if something's here it cannot shoot you, because this piece of terrain would block it. So what I'm doing here is I'm effectively blocking the line of sight, and maybe you just have to tilt it a little bit, like so, which is easily doable, and then you're basically stopping it from being shot turn 1, because it's got decent cargo in there, aka breaches, that are really good for mission play, and you kind of want to keep them, especially for rounds 3 when you're getting sustain hits too. And then the other Pathfinder squad, which I'm going to go on to last, because there's multiple places where you could deploy it. Let's talk about the Kroot. So the Kroot here, the first unit, is always dead center. And just think about why that might be. So why have I placed a Kroot unit in the center of my deployment? So that's right, if you thought about it, Kroot have an ability, which is basically sticky objectives. So in the command phase, should you have a Kroot unit on an objective and that you control in the command phase, you make that objective sticky. So assuming that you're going first, I'm going to showcase a maneuver that you can do. I'm going to be quite quick with it, but essentially you're placing your Kroots with a coherency 2 inches apart, and it'll look something like this. So you're going first, and you've kind of gone, okay, I scout moved my Kroot 7 inches, something like this, okay? And now in your command phase, you control this, and you control your home field. So as you're going first, you get to sticky this, and sticky that. And then, depending on obviously secondaries, you can just run away. You can just reline the wall. So essentially, Kroot will just come back through the wall and say, no, I've done my job, sticking some objectives, forced to trade, and I'm just going to stay here like that. And then the Kroot have got a defensive position, lined the wall to stop any incoming charges, like so, because you don't need them to be out in the open here, and you're good. So Kroot have successfully performed sticky objectives and also then come back into defensive position. Or if there's an option to get aggressive, you can obviously move them out, move block, charge some things, do what you want. But this is pretty much a standard way of me using the Kroot, especially on this mission. Speaking of Kroot, let's talk about the other unit of Kroot. So if you noticed, the reason I can sticky this center objective here is because it's within my scout range. So the objective actually is only like 4.1 away from my deployment line, hence why the Kroot can utilize their scout move 7 to go onto the objective and in the command phase sticky it. Same can be said about this objective. It's a little bit further out, but it's still within your scouting range. And because you don't have scout move 6, which wouldn't get you to the objective, but you have scout move 7, it gets you onto it. So you can have this Kroot unit, scout move forward, 7 inches, sticky this objective, and then, I know obviously this is best case scenario, right? But essentially, best case scenario, and the opponent hasn't blocked you off with infiltration, you can sticky 3 objectives, your home field, the center, and your opponent's expansion objective, turn 1. And with this being a Terraform mission, it's quite good. Right. So, that all being said, okay, we need to factor in the enemy's infiltration units and scout moves. So I'm going to go into detail in terms of where you should be looking to infiltrate your Pathfinder unit. Now the great thing about Pathfinders infiltrating is that they also have innate scout moves. They have scout move 7. You should never be infiltrating the unit just to be lost if you're going second. But some, say, armies force you to do that. Like, take the old World Eaters, for example. You had to sacrifice them just to stop all their army scout moving up and then going like 34 inches and hitting you in the face with clubs. But World Eaters now changed, but there are still a few armies that you might need to consider sacrificing a piece like this just to block the enemy movement. But if you get the infiltration, what you can do is you've got to think about where will the opponent infiltrate. If I just get rid of all these firing lanes for now. Alright, just to make it a little bit clearer. So, the enemy is obviously going to want to infiltrate a unit here to basically get into position for securing their expansion. Or, certain armies might want to infiltrate a unit here to basically block you sticking in the center, and if it has scout move, it can obviously scout move behind the wall. So really, those are the two kind of prime options for someone infiltrating. Scenario 1, they just want to get into position to secure their expansion because maybe they don't have the speed behind here or here to get there, so they're just going to put an infiltrating unit here, and obviously if it has infiltrating scout, it'll be 9 inches away from your deployment line, and then it'll just scout move back behind the wall. So that's option 1. Or scenario 1, should I say. Scenario 2 is that an opponent is well aware that because this point of the deployment line is the closest, like 16 inches away, they want to get aggressive into you. So they're going to want to stop you infiltrating to slow them down. So they will place their infiltrating unit. If it's like Nurglings, they'll just throw them out to the wolves and be like, I don't care if I lose them, it's just Nurglings. And then it stops us from sticking this, and then stops you from infiltrating, like, you know, your Pathfinders or anything else that might want to block the speed that's hiding behind this wall. So if you get first defender, then you can just go, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my Pathfinders here, 9 inches away from your deployment line, and I'm going to line them so that, for example, they can scout move back behind the wall, should I go second. So this for me is like a little bit of mini maneuver you can do. You can basically scout move the recruit forward to stick to the objective if you go first, and scout move the Pathfinders back, and then basically all be behind this ruin. So all this does is Pathfinders go, hey, we want our crew to stick in the center objective, so we're going to stop you from infiltrating here. And then both of these units, if we go first, are going to be fine. I get to stick in the center and run away. Or if I'm going second, at least my Pathfinders can then scout move behind the wall, behind the crew, and the crew can be the first line of defense. So you're not losing any of your resources. So it would look just, and I've done this in the Grundy maneuver a few times, but we don't have the Grundy maneuver here today. So I'm just going to roughly show you how you would deploy the Pathfinder team, something like this, okay? So you've kind of had them here so that they can scout move 7 behind the wall. Looks a little bit like, well, that's 5, and then you're going to have 2 more inches. So maybe you just have them a little bit like this, okay? So they can basically take the place of the recruit and be hiding behind all of this. Alright, so that's scenario 2. Scenario 3 is someone taking a little bit more of an aggressive stance, where they go, actually, I'm going to infiltrate here to stop you from infiltrating back there. But that's not really the plan for us, because I've already established that the Pathfinders are going to be here, alright? And I have no intention of going to this until later, because I can actually shoot stuff on here. So if he wants to infiltrate there, fine. I can push out a Riptide, shoot it. I can push out this Riptide, shoot it. I could even use my Breacher team if I really wanted to. So, with that in mind, I'm okay with this, because my Pathfinders can go behind the wall and -2 charge, and then I can easily deal with this at some point in the game. So really, your only 2 options is whether you infiltrate. Let me just change the colour. 2 choices you make. Do I infiltrate here, or do I infiltrate here? So let's talk about the second option. So I'm just going to pick up my Pathfinders. Try to pick up my Pathfinders. So why am I thinking of infiltrating over here? Well, the answer's simple. This objective, remember when I mentioned about Terraform, is the easiest for us to terraform if we have the right pieces. So, if I have my Pathfinders deployed in such a way where I can scout move to safety, and what you can do from a deployment perspective is if you place your unit first before you even entertain where you're placing infiltration. So, okay, I got defender role, I won, so I'm going to deploy my first infiltrating unit. Excuse me a second, where I just place my unit where they potentially can end up when they scout move. So I'm going to want to have them like this. Maybe I put one guy there, and then like one guy here. Okay. Right, so that's where I want them to be when they scout move backwards if I go second. So what I'm going to do now is then I'm going to measure 7. There we go. So I'm placing my Pathfinders like that do screen their infiltration, pushes them out to about here, which is fine. And then it also allows my crew to go forward. So if you picture the scene where an opponent deploys, just erase this, let's say an opponent goes, okay, well, I'm definitely going to infiltrate a unit here. God, I hate this. Alright, there. Awesome. What I'm going to do now, and I'm going first, well, my crew are basically going to scout move 7, stick at the objective, then I'm going to move 7. So I get like something like that, right? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to charge you. Maybe shoot, maybe grenade, whatever you want to do. And then what I'm going to do with my Pathfinders, just copy and paste them. Then I'm going to shove my Pathfinders here and start terraforming. 3, 6, 9, 10. So then you can't charge my Pathfinders now. You can't shoot my Pathfinders, and they're terraforming. So then, obviously, these guys aren't here because that's where they would be positioned if they want to go backwards. So then you have 10 OC on here that your opponent then has to really stretch to take it from you. And you could do some crazy things if you had a ghost keel in there. You could put a ghost keel right on the edge of the objective as well, or other pieces. And you can pull off a terraform immediately, which then gives you 2 points for every consecutive turn. Eventually the opponent will be able to take it from you, and then if they, for example, come to retaliate, takes them until turn 2, well, you're going first, so then you have the option of bringing in units, and I will talk about the reserves in the next step here. So hopefully that makes sense, and it just demonstrates the importance of careful, meticulous planning when it comes to deployment and your macro strategy going into the game. So, right, let's move on now to reserves, because there are a few, and there's another level to the plan that I want to discuss with you. Okay, so before I do that, I've got a little bit ahead of myself. So the Kroot and the Pathfinders, if you go second, we've already talked about all the stuff that you can do if you go first. If you're going second, what's the plan of action, right? Well, the plan of action is not to stick to the objective and go forward and just let your assets get shot, but we will then, what we'll do is we will scout move the Pathfinders into the position here, and then we'll just scout move the Kroot in such a way where they're just lining the wall. Yeah, okay, they can be charged, but you've got the -2 to charge strat, so it's not a problem. And that's quite a distance for someone to travel to come and dig some Kroot out. So roughly, give or take, like a millimetre an inch, just deploy it yourself, but it'll look a little bit like this. Maybe one extra Pathfinders this way, so that you can fit a few more in, okay? TTS doing TTS things, and I'm sure the audio is driving you mad, so let me just say, look, cool, Kroot are there. Yeah, done. And now you've got multiple resources, and the last thing before we go on to reserves, I'm going to erase all lines. In a game of 40k, what basically happens is this. Unit A goes onto objective here. Enemy Unit A onto objective. Then, what you do, in response, is you go, alright, my Unit A contests you. Okay, brilliant. This unit or another unit deletes that unit, and then you delete, so basically they deleted you, then you shoot them, and then they have to rinse and repeat. They'll send another unit out to hold the objective, and then you either send a unit out to contest or destroy, but in the likelihood of destroying this unit from behind the wall is very hard pressed to do with Tau, unless you've got the speed of Montcar and loads of breachfish and stuff like that. So you need to have enough pieces to go out and deny this primary. They put a unit on there, you put a unit out, you out contest them, and you do this little dance. And the same goes for this side. You put a unit out on there, they put a unit out to contest, so on and so forth. So you're playing this constant battle over trying to hold primary and deny primary. That needs to be within your battle plan. So how do you do that? Well, you have enough resources on this flank to be able to do that. So you'll notice that I've got a unit of crew. That could be the first turn send. I've charged you, or just moved on to the objective to contest you. Brilliant, you kill crew. Then I've got Pathfinder team, and then I've got a unit in reserve that can come and do the same thing. So I've got a 3 layered plan in terms of denying their expansion objective. And I'm sure the opponent will have a same sort of plan to tackle mine. So then it's all down to kind of swinging moments, dice, and tactics, and secondaries, of course. So in terms of reserve, I've got a Breacher Devilfish in reserve in Transport 1, and obviously in the centre transport I've just got Breachers. And I've also got a Cold Star with the Exemplar of Kauyon with his Plasma Fire Knife in Deep Strike. So what's my plan around Strat Reserve? So if I'm just going to grab a Devilfish here, then nice and simple, if an opponent hasn't lined up anything to shoot down this angle, because why would they if there's nothing to shoot, I could make use out of the Rapid Ingress stratagem, and in your end of your opponent's movement phase, you can spend a CP and bring in a unit from Strat Reserve. So then I'm ready, you're going to delete my Pathfinders, but then I've also got this unit to come out and delete you, forcing the trades that I was mentioning before about primaries, and that serves the purpose. And I can do that on either flank. I can do it to sabotage the enemy's expansion objective, or take away their objective, or I could use it to maybe reinforce mine. So I either do it on the attack, or I do it on the defense to reinforce my own. And that's the general plan with the Devilfish and Breachers. And also it's quite hard to hide everything in this deployment, and Devilfishes are quite big, so having that in Strat Reserve is definitely a good move. Let's talk about the more mobile unit. And remember guys, stealth suits give you free rapid ingress if you have a model within 3. So take this example here. This stealth suit, I'm just going to put them up here for visual representation, is behind there. So if I want to rapid ingress, I have 1 crisis suit within 3. Doesn't have to be wholly within 3, just within 3. And then I don't spend a CP when it comes to rapid ingress. So if you picture the scene here, where maybe it's turn 2, and we've not really committed anything to the centre, neither of us had an area denial, neither of us had an incentive to put anything on there to get shot or charged. So you're going second, and it's the end of your opponent's movement phase, and they've not put any units screening this objective. Well, thank you very much, sir. There's nothing lined up to shoot what's not there, because clearly nothing's out in the open, so why would you reveal a piece to shoot something that's not there? I will rapid ingress, please, and I will rapid ingress like so. I'll have a crisis suit within 3 of this stealth suit, and then I'm just going to plonk my unit right here on the centre objective, furthest away from any incoming charges, which would usually be like 1 inch away from the wall, maybe right up against the wall. So I'm going to give you a 9-inch charge if you wanted to, but I'm going to be getting extra primary here. It is a risk, but in game of 40k you have to take risks. It's a risk and reward kind of game, and this could be huge in terms of swinging the primary. And then obviously, not only does it swing the primary, but you're also in a very aggressive position that the opponent's maybe not planned for, and you can advance, go this way, an average of 3 plus 12 with a Cold Star, because the Cold Star gives plus 2 move. It will be 15 inches, so you can go into here and start blasting, or alternatively, if you get a high advance, for example, you could probably go in here and shoot into here. So you've got many options. And certain detachments have way better abilities to be able to utilize this move, such as Retcad, where you can kind of move out, shoot, and fire and fade, so you can be incredibly oppressive. And then also, the other thing to factor in, and this is kind of like expert level tactics, is that if it's turn 2, and maybe your opponent is attacking your expansion objective here, so let's assume that maybe the Pathfinder team is on the objective here, and your opponent's lined up a unit. I'm just going to copy and paste a unit to charge. They're going for it, they want to take you from the primary, it's turn 2, they've had enough of your silly little games, and you're like, okay, cool. And you've set up no other units to shoot, so I'm going to rapid ingress. Let's just assume that the stealth suit's behind the Pathfinders. I'll do it for free. There we go. I've lined up. I'm going to overwatch you because it's turn 2, and I'm a finite team. So I get to do full rerolls. So I'm going to have 10 gun drone shots, because 2 of them are with the commander. So that's 10 gun drone shots. I'm going to reroll everything because you're at full starting strength. And it's turn 2, so those 4 become 8 because you get sustain hits 1, not sustain hits 2 because you're not guided. Strength 5. Okay, so there's 7 saves. Okay, it's 3 dead so far. Then I'm going to do the commander shots. He's going to have, the crisis shots of 6 plasmas. Okay, 3 becomes 6. 2s. Sad times. 4 dead. So they've lost 4 from that. 3 from this. I'm still not done because I've got the commander's 3 plasma rifles. Reroll. Nothing. And he's cyclic. Ooh, nice. 2s. AP2s. 3 more dead. Happy days. Killed the unit. So not only have you killed a unit, you've also kept your primary through a clever rapid ingress and overwatch. This works really well with finite teams because they have full rerolls if the enemy unit is at full starting strength. And with this having the exemplar of Kauyon, that has just proven that a 10-man squad equivalent to the Pathfinders has just been wiped. And if it's Marines, remember each one of those plasmas that go through are AP 3, damage 3. So it's really good into a lot of profiles. And then failing that, even if they left a couple, like 2 or 3, it's not enough to out-OC you. And even if it was, they could charge, and you could even heroic intervene and put more OC and really hold on to that primary. These are some expert level tactics, and I've got plans to showcase different levels of tactics that I use, and that's going to be coming soon, and it's going to be called Master the Maneuver. So stay tuned for that, but that is just an example for free. The power of a rapid ingress and overwatch in Kauyon and with the finite team. Apart from that, your rapid ingress plays here to defend your objective, here to attack, because you can basically rapid ingress here with the stealth suits, move out and go and attack what's hidden behind the wall. Yes, they'll probably be on a one-way trip, but then at least it baits out other pieces to come and attack, and therefore you can retaliate with other pieces. And as this unit wants to get the maximum benefit from sustain its turn 2, it gives a little bit of breathing room for your things like riptides, broadsides, to then next turn in turn 3 go absolute crazy with sustain hits 2. Right, the final 2 sections to talk about will be secondaries, and let's go into that. So, secondaries. Having a look at my deployment. What am I set up for? Right. Let's take the obvious ones. Containment. Containment is a really good card because it's worth 6 points. So if we just show containment now, what units have I set up for containment? Well, Pathfinders could do it because they can be here, but also that might expose them a little bit. Containment is completed immediately. You don't have to survive like sabotage or recovering assets. But I've also placed 2 units that can do that. I've got my Pathfinders, and I've also got these 3 stealth suits here. They can move with enough movement from the 2nd floor down to here and basically do containment with a smaller footprint. So that covers this side of the board here. And on the right side, I've got 3 stealth suits that have been positioned so that they can move 8 and basically be outside of my deployment, here, here, and then contain. So that covers that. So containment done. Now, sabotage is one where you have to be on a terrain feature that is out of your deployment zone. Well, and your unit needs to be outside the deployment zone. Well, great. Then my stealth suit unit can actually fit in this little gap here. I'm out of my deployment zone. I'm in a terrain feature. There we are. Perfect. So I can sabotage here. And as long as I've got units to kind of screen this way, I can't be charged. So you can pull off sabotage here. And there's even a little spot here, but you have to have the stealth suits wholly in there. So you can do it in this little pot kit here. So that's the other thing that you can do. Same with recovering assets. So you can recover assets here and then recover assets with something in no man's land. Sorry, in your deployment zone. So it could be any of these pieces that are not revealing it. So that covers off recovering assets. Secure no man's land, extend is obvious. You've got to go on objectives in no man's land. So, you know, Go and do what your normal game plan would be. Deny their expansion, take your own. Simple as that. Area denial is the only other one. So, tactics that people play, especially on UKTC, is that if you place a model, one model, right up against the wall here, it is within 6. So it would deny you big points on area denial. Now, other armies can do it because they don't really fear our combat, because we don't have any, really, outside of rampages. So they're most likely to do this. But you can do it too, to deny them, if you know that they're going to be going for these crews anyway. And you've always got the -2 to charge strat with the photon grenades to fall back on. But you can do establish locust from behind the wall, and you can deny the enemy's area denial. But realistically, for your points, if you wanted to push out a unit to do area denial, you just put within 3 and establish locust as well, you can do it. But obviously, establish locust you can do from behind the wall, so at least then it forces your opponent to charge rather than to shoot them. So that's all about secondaries. And it's really important, and something that I talk about a lot, is deploying your army to achieve points, not to just do damage. Yes, damage is important, and you can do that by the early stages of this video, where I was showing you about firing lanes, working them out, positioning of your units to make use out of their firepower, and optimizing their target allocation. And that all comes down to you knowing the map, looking at how the game state would go, and planning accordingly. And then obviously for your scoring, the second part of your deployment plan should be also, how am I going to get the most out of my pieces to do certain secondary cards when they pop up? Having a plan for this is the difference between consistency in your score or inconsistency. And we've had many of those games where, oh, if this card had just come up now, it'd have been different. Or if I'd have just got this, I'd just got that. Or if I'd have just rolled a 2 on the advance, even with a CP rule, I only needed 2, but I rolled a 1, so I couldn't do the action, or whatever it may be. Plan for the worst, and you're never going to be surprised. And your scores will always reflect consistency in your plan. And this is something that you need to obviously perfect and practice. And the reason, I suppose, you come to my channel and join the Puretide program is to get that knowledge and experience from me, because I've had 25 years of playing Tau. And a lot of experience from tournament plays, you name it. I've seen it all and done it all. So, hopefully, you've really, really enjoyed this deep dive of deployment. I would honestly love it if you can come and join the Puretide program by clicking the description, the link below. And let me just recap. So, hello, I'm back again. So, if you signed up on the Pathfinder level, which is the basic level entry, you will get access to all of the videos in the Basic Training Academy and much more. I've got demonstration days that I do interactive days with once a month with my audience, where we do a scenario and we work together to solve this, the problem in front. And you will get access to all of these deployment videos for every single Tau detachment on all 3 variants, WTC, GW, and UKTC. And like I said, there's 30 hours of content, 60 videos. Now, not including the basic training for building and understanding a balanced list. Just to showcase as well, lots of people have signed up in the past and also are still current, and their reviews speak for themselves. So we had plenty of reviews showcasing the very best of what the Puretide program stands for, and how it's helped them through expert advice, interactive sessions, and just generally our upbeat attitude towards the game. And I'd love you to be a part of this. So click on the link below. Please remember a couple of operational things. Apply the discount code, okay, of deployment to the checkout cart, because if you don't, it can't be retrospectively added. So to get 10% off, put in the code deployment, and that will take off 10% of the total value. It's on a month-by-month rolling agreement, so there's no long contracts to it. You can be a part of it for as long or as little as you like. And do remember to check out the other tiers as well, because later on this week I will be recapping one of the tournament games I played with the Kauyon list, and I'll be showcasing what's available for chasseurs. And I review one tournament a month that I go to, and I give you a full TTS reconstruction of the game, talk all levels of macro strategy, and you get to see it firsthand as if you were there at the event with me. And I do put a lot of passion and pride into this, and I'd love for you to join. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for your time and energy. Please let me know in the comments if you've liked this sort of thing, and also if you've enjoyed it, and what are your kind of thought process on like your deployment. What do you look for? What are some of the things that kind of you have embedded into your head that every game you do like clockwork? I'm really interested to find out. So anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. Look forward to the rest of the content, and I'll speak to you all soon. Take care.